said, you could gain the whole world and it would be a net loss compared to your losing your soul. Then in our text today, in our outline, it says, we are to throw off everything that hinders. To throw off everything that hinders. The athletes would come in, likely in the robes that represented their towns and everything. And then, before the race, they would drop these robes, and basically they would be wearing almost nothing. Okay? Because robes, it's kind of hard to run in a robe. Anybody ran in a long dress? Okay? I haven't lately. But I would imagine it would be kind of difficult. That's why soldiers did not wear robes. They wore what looks like little skirts because they would have to run in battle. So they would throw off, here's the image continuing, if you want to run this race, you have to throw off that which entangles you. To throw it away. Throw off everything that hinders. So the writer of Hebrews is saying, if you want to run with perseverance and win this spiritual race of life, you need to begin to throw off that which hinders you in your spiritual development and growth. So what can trip us up? One thing that can trip us up is our attitude. You might want to check your attitude. That's on your outline. What is an attitude? An attitude is a mindset. A mindset. A way of thinking or feeling about someone or something. Now, we as humans, we have the capacity to be self-aware. In other words, we can step outside of ourselves and look at us and say, you know, what is my attitude? How am I thinking about this? And that's one of the things I think we need to be mindful of if we want to throw off that which hinders us. What is your attitude about life? About a certain situation? Maybe there's somebody at your work that's really difficult to deal with. Am I the only person who ever had somebody difficult to deal with? What is your attitude about it then? I'm not saying that you don't have legitimate concerns, but what is your attitude? Can you step back and say, what is my attitude about this person? And how is this helpful or hurtful as I go into this? How can I make things better? What can I do? Because a lot of times there's not a whole lot you can do about what anybody else does. So we need to check our attitude, our mindset. I would say the second thing that I would ask you to remember is humility. Humility. It's not a word that's often used today. People don't laud up somebody and pronounce them because he's a really humble person. You don't hear that often. But humility is all through the Scriptures. We are called to be humble. In fact, Paul says in Philippians, your attitude should be the very same as Jesus, who humbled himself, did not consider equality with God something to be held on to. That would be just the opposite of what our world teaches. We hold on to superiority. We hold on to being in charge. We hold on to being the person that everybody thinks is the top. But Jesus did not hold on to that. He let go of it. Did not consider it something to be grasped a hold of, but let go of it in order to be the Savior of you and I. Aren't you glad that He did that way? In humility. So humility is something that also is something that allows us to be learners. You can't be a learner if you think you know everything. Ever thought of that? Anybody ever coached or taught somebody who thought they knew everything? I have. And it probably was me every once in a while. Psalm 149 says, for the Lord takes delight in His people. He crowns the humble with salvation. Jesus said, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. When Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit, really he's saying, blessed are those who are humble. Pastor that I know, he translated that, blessed are those who believe they have not yet arrived. You know what a person is like who believes they've arrived? They've got everything. They're not much to learn. They're not very willing to change. What does humility teach? I think, first of all, humility teaches us about God's grace. We realize how much God has given us, and that helps us to change our attitude and throw off that which entangles us. We know we need God's grace, and when we realize we have received God's grace and how, if it were not for God's grace, how much we would trip up and how limited we would be, that also extends how we view others. We're able to give others God's grace. You're not able to give others much grace if you'll not give yourself any. If you're not willing to give yourself any grace, it's hard to give it to others. What can trip us up then? What can trip us up? The next thing that we need to be aware of is the sin that so easily entangles. What is the sin that so easily entangles? I think it can be a sin that appears over and over again. But we can beat sin. In Genesis 4, chapter 4, we see here the experience of Cain and Abel, that this very in the beginning of the Bible and the teachings of God, Cain and Abel have brought on a sacrifice, but Cain and his offering, God did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. He was angry, though God looked on favor at Abel's. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? This is chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. Why is your face downward? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. Okay? You can choose not to go through it. It is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it. From the very beginning, God is saying there is a choice that you can make, but you must master this idea of the sin that is crouching at your door. In other words, it's going to take some want to, and some humility, and some willingness. There are certain sins that bedevil us over and over, aren't they? There are certain things that we are able to just slide right through. We feel pretty good about ourselves. But there are certain things that keep popping back up in our lives. Paul writes in Romans that he said, the sin that I did not want to do, but I still continue to do. It happens over and over and over again. Makes me think of, remember from the Judges, Samson, he's got so many strengths. He's the strongest man in the world, but he meets Delilah, and she seems to have a hold over him. And first she says to him, tell me this, tell me the secret to your strength. And he says something like, oh, you put bowstrings that are from a bow and arrow. You put them over me and bind me, and then I won't have any weakness. So she does that, and of course he breaks out of it. You figure Samson would say, this woman's not up to any good, but yet then she says, he says, what is it your strength? Oh, if you put a rope that's never been used. Well, what does she do? She does it again, and he jumps up, and he's got his strength, and then finally she binds his hair in some way and puts it in a pin in it, and she does it again, and Samson is able to jump up, and then, of course, he finally breaks down and tells her to cut his hair. The sin that goes over and over and over again and again and again. I think that may be what Paul talks about with the sin of the flesh. We oftentimes jump automatically to a medical condition. But it could be that there's a sin in Paul's life where he says he's asked over and over for this sin to be removed. And the Lord says, my grace is sufficient for you. Your desire for that will not be removed, but my grace is sufficient for you. God can give us the triumph over sinful habits. In order for us to have the life that He desires for us, we need to set aside that which is entangles, and we can do it. We need to remember also those who've gone before us. There are people that have overcome sin in this church, who have overcome problems in this church. When Daniel mentioned Charles the other day, I've had people come up to me that have attended this church that are not going now, that said, it really encouraged me when every year in January Charles says, I'm 16 years sober, I'm 17 years sober, I'm 18 years sober. And it can be overcome. That's an encouragement. And in verse 11, we again, Moses, Abraham, Elijah, all these people who've gone beforehand, who we can look forward to see that God has brought us triumph over those sins. Here we have this picture in the Scripture, though, of witnesses who've gone before us. It's kind of hard to say exactly what that means. Are they people who've gone before us, godly people who are looking down upon us and praying for us? I don't exclude that fact. It says in Revelation that the martyrs cry out, how long, O Lord, how long? So they are in some ways aware of what's going on in the world. It would not surprise me that those who've gone on, my grandmother and father and others, that if they're aware that they might be praying for me. But we also have to be careful where the Bible is silent about things. We don't need to go too much further, okay? That's about all it says. And if we're not careful, we can start building scaffolding up where people begin to pray to ancestors and all those kind of things. All we can know is that there are witnesses, and they would certainly be wanting us to live the godly life that God wants us to live. Calling upon us to endure. So we can also, though, take these and say that we can be a worthy and willing witness to encourage others through our word and witness. Are you a person who is one who helps others? Groups, AA, NA, Weight Watchers, all those are basically built upon mutual help groups. They call them mutual help groups. And what they do is they mobilize, and then they say, they write that they're trying to get you to adapt and social network of attenders. Adapt the changes that you need to in your life. That's losing weight or stopping drinking. It's a help when you to decrease the people you're around, if you have a problem with alcohol, who are drinking. Okay? And you're supposed to be around more people who are trying to help you be the abstinence of that. It's not rocket science, but it works. Okay? Mutual helping each other, mutual helping groups. And then persons you can call up. You know, if it's Weight Watchers, I really want to eat that piece of cake. Don't eat that. Eat something else. If I really want to drink or I really want to do drugs, all those things are supposed to, those groups, it's part of that. Witnesses. Listen, that's what the church was meant to do from the beginning. Helping each other. In Galatians, bear each other's burdens. Galatians 6:2, I believe. Bear each other's burdens. And it says, though, to carry your own burden in verse 5. There's a part that you have to walk in this yourself. But a willing witness to help people. Are people willing to express their problems to you? Do you feel like the person that would be willing to hear that? First, we have to admit we have a problem. And We hear that expressions all the time. You may have a problem in, some substance abuse or something. But sometimes we have a problem in that maybe, we interrupt somebody too much in our conversation, maybe our spouse. That may not be the biggest thing in the world, but all of a sudden we're aware of it. Maybe some of the things we do in our normal lives. These little things that happen, you can't help it if you're not aware of it. Check your attitude, okay? We can do that. As God's people, we can check our attitude. Face the sin that keeps tripping you up. And seek help. Remember those who've gone before you. Those who have accomplished and overcome their sin are sometimes those who have been unable to. And we can see how that can mar and distort their life. But all in all, what we need to do is focus on Jesus. The witnesses are important, but right there in the midst of your scripture, what face is it that is the most important? It's those, not those who've gone on, very important, but Jesus is the most important. Focus on Jesus, who gives us the strength and the courage to throw off that which entangles us and to have the new habits and new attitudes to be the person that God is calling us to be today. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for those who've gone before us and poured their lives out into us, those who desire our success. Lord, but most of all, we think about Jesus, who did not consider equality with you there in the heavenly reaches to be so important that he was willing to give that up so that we can have a more fulfilling life in this life and a greater one in the life to come, one that no one would here would want to miss. Lord, we ask now that you would bless us, help us where we have need to throw off that which entangles and separates and takes away the life that we would desire. Lord, help us to run the race with perseverance. In Christ Jesus' name.